Hello all. In today's lecture, we are going to learn about the Performa of the cost sheet. As we have already discussed that the cost sheet is divided into four parts. First part is our prime cost. Second part is our work and factory cost. Third part will be our cost of goods sold, and fourth part will be our cost of sales. So let's start with the basic part, that is our prime cost. So whenever we are going to calculate prime cost, in the prime cost we have to include the basic things. That means all those things which are required to produce a product. Because if the product is not there in your hands, there is no use of opening a factory or office or showroom or doing advertisement or keeping the staff. So the first basic requirement is to have a product. So whenever we are utilizing the product or we are manufacturing the product, the first thing is direct material. Once we have purchased the material, we have to put some labor on that and some expenses. Maybe the electricity expenses which are being required to run the machines, or maybe any other expenses. So once we add all the direct material, direct wages and direct expenses, we are going to arrive at prime cost. But over here you just have to remember that whenever we are calculating the direct material, it should not be only the direct material purchased. It should be direct material consumed. That means whatever material we have consumed for producing the product. And for calculating the direct material consumed, first of all we have to add the opening stock. In the opening stock we have to add purchases. Now, whenever you purchase the raw material, there must be some carriage. So, the carriage inward, we can say carriage inward. If there is some scrap and you are selling that scrap, so that can be subtracted from that scrap, and you have to subtract the closing stock of material. So, once you are done with this, you will get the direct material consumed. So, the first step is to add direct material, direct labor and direct expenses. You will come to at prime cost. And over here we are going to make two columns. In the first column we are going to write the details, and in the second column we are going to plus all those detail expenses and then write it over here. So what I have done, I have written the direct material cost, direct wages and expenses over here. I add all this thing and write it over here. So my prime cost is a combination of direct material, direct labor and direct expenses. Now, irrespective of direct material, direct labor and direct expenses, whatever expenses are being incurred in a company will be all indirect, because these are the expenses which are producing the product, and all other expenses which are being incurred in a company are the helping hand. They are helping us to produce the product. They are not directly producing the product. So in prime cost, we have, first of all, we have to add the indirect factory expenses. Indirect factory expenses means all those expenses which are being incurred in a factory. So the first expense is indirect material. Indirect material can be oil, which is being used in a machine, or it can be a broom, which is used to clean the floor, or it can be your tea, coffee, or snacks, which is provided to the employees. Then indirect labor. Indirect labor means all those labor which are helping us to produce the product. Maybe you can say you have hired the housekeeper who is cleaning the floor, or you can say sweeper. So because the person who is manufacturing the product can't sit in a dirty place, so some cleaning person should be there. Or maybe you are paying the salary of a guard, or maybe you are giving the salary to the supervisor who is supervising the products. So these are the indirect labor. They are helping indirectly in manufacturing the product. Next is heat, lighting and power, which is being used in a machine, being used in a factory. Next, depreciation of machine. Depreciation means usage of machine, wear and tear of machine. And if the machine needs repair, that is also an indirect expense that is to be recorded in factory expenses. Next is insurance of a factory or a machinery. Whatever lights is being used in a factory, oil, water charges or factory supervision. So these are few of the factory expenses. There can be more factory expenses. So what you have to do, you have to add all these expenses and write it over here. Now, whenever we are working in a factory, there can be the situation that some products are under progress. That means some processes are under machines, they are being manufactured. So what we have to do, we have to add the opening work in progress and we have to subtract the closing work in progress. So whatever expenses are there, you are going to add it. In that, you are going to add opening work in progress and you have to subtract closing work in progress. Then you will get work cost, or it can also be named as factory cost. Now once you arrive at the factory cost, so factory cost means in prime cost you have to add all these expenses. You have to add opening work in progress and subtract closing work in progress. So you will get work cost or factory cost. Now in work cost and factory cost we have to add all indirect office expenses. That means whatever expenses are being incurred in an office, so we have to add that. So various office expenses will be salary given to the office staff. If you have rented a building, or if you have purchased a building, so depreciation of a building, whatever light bill is being used in an office, bank charges if you are donating, postage, telegram, audit fees, printing stationery, phone bill, your photostat, internet charges. So all these things will be your few expenses that are being incurred in an office. So these are the indirect expenses. So what we have to do, we have to write it over here and then we will add it and write it in the final column. Now once we are going to add your factory cost and all these expenses, we are going to arrive at cost of production. So cost of production means the cost which is being incurred to produce the goods. But it is not compulsory that whatever goods we are producing the goods, we are selling that. It can be possible that some goods are being lying in the godown before we start the production. So we name it as opening stock of finished goods. So we already have some goods in the godown. We produce this much goods. So we have the total goods. That means we can say that cost of goods that we have produced and some opening stock of finished goods which is already there. So what we are going to do, first of all, we are going to calculate cost of production, and in that cost of production, we are going to add opening stock of finished goods. Now, whatever part we are going to have it after adding cost of production and opening stock of finished goods. So these are the goods which are lying in the godown to sell. But it is not a guarantee that whatever goods there are in the godown, we are going to sell it. There can be some goods which are being unsold and remains in the godown. So if this is a situation that some goods are still there in a godown and you are not able to sell it, we name it as closing stock of finished goods. And we have to subtract that closing stock of finished goods from this total. Once we are going to subtract it, we are going to get cost of goods sold. Now in cost of goods sold, we have to add all the selling and distribution expenses. That means whatever expenses which are being incurred to either to sell a product or to distribute a product. So it can be your advertisement expense, bad debt. Now bad debts are those expenses, that means if you have sold the product to any debtor and that debtor has become bankrupt and is not able to repay back the amount to you. So that amount becomes bad debts and that is to be included in the selling and distribution expenses. You have to add legal charges. If some customer sue you, you have to file some case and you have to bear some legal charges. If you have taken a warehouse, so rent of a warehouse, delivery van expenses, your selling expenses, commission on sales. If you have distributed the refreshment, that expenses. Now collection charges. Suppose you have sold the goods to some customer and you have to send some person to collect your amount. So that will be your collection charges. You have a showroom, so whatever expenses are being incurred in a showroom, that will be your showroom expenses because showroom is open to sell the product. Your entertainment expenses, you have put some salesmen, so whatever expenses are being incurred by the salesman, that will be there. Your branch expenses, your carriage outward. So whenever we are using the word carriage, there are two types of carriage inward and carriage outward. Carriage inward is always added in the raw material purchase. So whenever we are purchasing the raw material, we have to add carriage inward while calculating the prime cost. And carriage outward means the carriage which is being incurred while selling the product. So that carriage outward will be added in the cost of goods sold. Now next is your traveling expenses. If you have some websites, so website expenses. So you have to add all these expenses and the total should be written in the final column. Now, whatever cost of goods sold you have calculated, in that you have to add all these indirect selling and distribution expenses. You will arrive at cost of sales. Now, in the cost of sales, either profit is there to add it, if loss is there, you have to subtract it, and you will arrive at total sales revenue. So, this is the complete Performa of the cost sheet. Hope you have understood the concept. For further reference, you can refer my book, Introduction to Cost Accounting. Thank you.